Okay, good evening, and thank you again for joining our first Parent University. It's our roadmap to success, navigating curriculum and technology. I am Courtney Adams, the Family and Community Engagement Coordinator, and I really appreciate your time this evening. We hope that today's session provides you with some useful information and tips to help support your student during distance and virtual learning. We will have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat now and we'll get through them. Or once the presentation is over, you can raise your hand. If you're joining us on the KCPS live channel, you may experience a delay. You'll also be unable to ask questions. Before we get started, I want to make sure that our Spanish speaking families, if there are any on, are able to access interpretation services. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Alvarez to provide more instructions. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Buenas tardes. En este momento, si tenemos a alguien que está hablando en español o que quiere escuchar esta reunión en español, si por favor puede salir de mute y decir algo para que nosotros supiéramos que estén aquí. O si quiere cambiar el idioma español, puede oprimir o hacer clic en el círculo abajo de su pantalla y oprimir español en la parte de interpretaciones. Si hay alguien en este momento que habla español y que quiere esta reunión en español, si por favor puede decir algo para que nosotros supiéramos que estén aquí en esta reunión.
Okay, next slide, please. Thank you, Camila. And next, I wanted to invite you all to attend or stop by our drive-through voter registration on next Wednesday, September the 30th, from 3 to 6. If you have voting age children or friends or family or people in your community that you would love to invite and may not have yet had a chance to get registered, please invite them to our voter registration drive. Of course, we'll practice all the necessary social distancing and face mask wearing. But we hope to see you all on September the 30th. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Jones to get started.
Good evening, families. How are you doing? I'm Dr. Jones. I am a member of the KCPS, and today I really want to talk to you about the digital platforms that we're using for the remote learning, as well as how your child will be accessing that information, how you can actually help your child with the information that they will be getting from their teachers and moving them forward in their educational endeavors. So first of all, your day should look like. Now, one of the things that I definitely want to say is we do have some routines that we've found to be very beneficial and are best practices in making sure that your students get on, meet with their teachers, and are able to access all the information that they need to be successful students. So the first thing I want to say is you want to start off each day going to Clever. Now, think of Clever as our one-stop shop for most of our applications. And here's what I mean. By logging in here first, a lot of the remote or the digital resources that we have, we will not have to log in a second time. A couple of ways to get there. And when I was helping parents, one of the things that I noticed is that sometimes the student was going to the wrong Clever site. And here's what I mean. Clever is a nationwide company, and you find that helps a lot of districts. So when you go to clever.com, just like that, it's going to pull up all of its schools from everywhere in the country. So if you think about a school like a Central Middle School or a Benjamin Banneker School, that name is going to be used a lot. So some of our students were having hard times finding the right classroom. So here's what I say. One of the things that I tell parents is sometimes it's better just to have your student type in the URL or the web address to get them to the specific clever that is the KC public school site. So here's what I mean. If you notice here, I have kcpublicschools.org/clever. By going here, you're going to go to the clever site that belongs to our district, as opposed to going just to the clever site for anyone who uses clever around the country. At that and password can get into our clever system. If, however, you have a student who is using an iPad, I would suggest using the clever icon that is located on that particular iPad. It should take you to the exact same address. If for any reason it does not, then I would say just go into the Safari that one time, use the URL, and at that point, the iPad should realize, oh, I got it. And it should take care of this issue moving forward. Now, remember, when we're looking at the username, it is your student's first name for their student ID number. As far as the password, that's just going to be the birthday, the 2-digit month, the 2-digit day, and then the 4-digit year. Okay? Depends on the age of your student, how it will look. Here's what I mean. For our students who are pre-K 6, you're going to find that there's going to be more icons and more apps than if you are in middle school and more than if you're in high school. But they're all going to go over the same basic information, meaning there will be some apps for ELA, which is English and Language Arts, some apps for math, some for science, some for social studies, and then some for what we call our learning platforms. So you may see different icons on the particular device. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is Microsoft Office, and here's why. When the district pivoted away from using Gmail, it started using Microsoft. And what we find is that regardless of if you're using a Google Classroom, or if you're using Seesaw, or if you're using any of our other apps, the emails that the teacher will be sending to your students through our Outlook account. So one of the things that I also suggest as the second step in your everyday practice is making sure that your child is logged into their Outlook account. Now, there are two ways of getting into Outlook, and it really depends on the device. And that's why I put those icons. They both lead to the same place. It's just that the icon on a Chromebook may look a little different than the icon that you see on an iPad. But in both cases, the first thing that's going to pop up is the sign-in screen. And with that screen, you're going to, like I said again, put the child's complete email address. So again, first name, first initial of their last name, the last 4 of their student ID number, and then add the word at kcpublicschools.org, and then you can get in. And then as far as the password is going to be the same, just their birthday. Okay? The important thing about when you go into Outlook is that when you're looking at this, the Outlook is going to have a couple of things that are specific to the assignments that your child's going to get. For example, when you first go in, you want to make sure that it's when you go into Outlook for the first time, you may see, as you notice here, these 2 messages. If you don't, that lets you know that 1, it's not forwarding emails that your child gets to you. So if that is the case, and you're finding that, oh, my child's getting emails that I don't get them, you're going to go into the settings, just like I have here, and you're going to actually forward your emails, or the emails that your child two door account. So in this example, I show you, and you will have access to this, that if you go into the settings, you can put your email address there. Once that happens, then you'll be able to child. You'll also be able to monitor what they're supposed to be doing. The next thing that I want to point out is that once you're in Outlook, you should be looking for emails that have the RSVP somewhere there or somewhere in the screen. Here's why. Those are reservations for meetings. They're also reservations that can be put on your child's calendar. So that way you'll know when they're supposed to meet with their teacher, when that synchronous or that face-to-face instruction is supposed to take place. The last thing is, if you notice with the image that you see here, you can pretty much find what classes your teacher has assigned work to your child. So Outlook is a very useful and a very important part of starting each day. Next, going into Google Classroom. Now, one of the things I want to say is, although you will find Google Classroom in Clever, that's not how you want to get in. And this was another issue that I saw with a lot of, this is where it should go. Actually, it's not. And part of the reason is, at times, Google and Clever, they kind of do the same thing in that they query or they gather information together. But here's what I'm saying. When you go in and you put your child's credentials, first you have to put in the whole email address. However, you'll find with Google Classroom, when you do this, instead of the classroom opening up and you just going into the Google Classroom, you will find that what happens is your child will get stuck in this limbo where you put in the credentials, you put in the password, it says, okay, everything looks good. But when that happens, you just get a spinning wheel. That lets you know that, okay, wait a minute, I went in the wrong way, like this. I would suggest, if you're going to go in to Google Classroom, if you have an iPad, look for that icon. All right. If you have, however, a Chrome settings that deal with Google, and most children who have Chromebooks know to look, it's like a square with like 9 dots. If you click there, you'll find the same icon. But again, when you go in, you want to make sure that you're using your child's full email address. Once you put the full email address in, and more important, once you put it in the password, which is their birthday, then what will happen is that you will get into their Google classes. All right. So if you're looking at this, you'll see that you'll find is that, first of all, you may have some classes that are from previous years, and you'll have some classes from this year. Well, here's the deal. One of the things about Google Classroom is that it marks each assignment or each discussion with a date. So you can tell based on the date of the discussion or the date of the assignment if we're talking about work that's from this year or work from a previous year. Some of these, like for example, you see that this child has 3rd grade and 4th grade, you would ignore the 3rd grade, just focus on the 4th grade. The other thing is, you find that when you go into the classroom, besides getting the stream or the announcements, there's a button at the very bottom that says classwork. That's something that you want to check periodically, because that tells you not only when an assignment is due, but it also tells you what kind of assignment. Is it a homework assignment? Is it a report? You know, is it research? Okay. Now.
Okay. En este momento queremos saber si hay alguien en esta reunión que habla en español y que quiere escuchar esta reunión en español. Si ustedes pueden decir algo para ayudarnos a nosotros, identificarte, o si quieres la reunión en español, por favor, diga algo en este momento.
Now, as I said, Clever is where most of our icons are housed, but there are some that are very important that are not in Clever. And the reason for this is not all of these large publishing companies talk to each other well. And sometimes, although we still want to use it for our students. One example of that is Savas, what used to be Pearson. The main thing that I want you to understand about Savas is that is your elementary math resource. So we're talking about kids primarily in grades kindergarten through about sixth grade. Now, for them, most times the teacher will email them the link to get to this very page. However, there are some times where there's some gaps or it doesn't go out with every single email. So here's what I've done. PowerPoint is the link that your students should be getting from their teacher. That link will bring you to the Savas login. Just like with Clever, it's going to say Kansas City Public School District. Now, if it does not say that, then that means that you're on the national side of this, which means the login information may not work because they're like, which school you're associated with. Now, again, and this is the upside of everything that we do here at KCPS. The usernames and passwords are the same for all of our applications. That is what unites everything that we do. So again, the username for this is still your child's email address. And remember, that's your child's first name, first initial of the last name, last four of their student ID number, and then at kcpublicschools.org. And then with the password, it's their birthday, a 2-digit month, 2-digit day, and then the 4-digit year. Okay. Now, the other apps or icons that reside outside of Clever, app that is used a lot by your younger classrooms or your younger students. We're talking about kindergarten, first grade, second grade. You may see it as far up as third grade. Flipgrid is another one of our apps that reside outside of Clever, but it does talk to Google and Google Classroom. So you may find that you'll have students that will get Flipgrid assignments. Both of these are very easy to find on the face or the home screen of your iPad. And then Microsoft Teams. Think of Microsoft Teams the same way that you think of a Google Classroom. The difference is Microsoft Teams talks directly to your child's email. You'll see a Teams meeting just like you would see a Google Meet meeting, and it does the same thing. We're talking about having synchronous instruction between the teacher and the student, where they're both looking at each other same time on their screen. Okay. Now we're going to pivot a little bit away from the tech or the platform and get into the content. And the reason why I put listened for here is because I do want you to understand that when we talk about our children's education, it's more than just what they're seeing, but it's also what they're hearing and the conversations that you are having with your child. So let's start with pre-K. Now, one of the things about our pre-K program is that most of the resources reside in this platform called Learning A to Z. And as I said, Learning A to Z is Clever. So if you log into Clever first thing, that would be there. Now, some of the things that your child will be doing in pre-K. First is going over sounds and rhythms. Next would be letters and letter sounds. These are things that, honestly, there's so many ways that you could reinforce this. The next one is something that's important, but sometimes people don't realize it with their hand dexterity skills. Basically, you want to build up that hand strength that children not only can hold writing utensils, but that they can also use them to make the shapes that will one day become letters. So we want to, as much as possible, have your children writing, coloring, drawing, scribbling, but just being used to using pens, pencils, crayons. Now, again, you want to put them on a surface that it's not going to be a problem. So it would be great if you have paper instead of having to do this on your walls. Next, numbers, counting, quantity, groups. Here's the thing. When we talk about numbers, this is something that you can reinforce again at any time of the day. And a lot of children go to the grocery store, and that's when math really becomes something that they can see and it becomes a lot. When we talk about quantities, we're really talking about a little, a lot. When we talk about groups, you can think of things like grapes versus like oranges, grapes, and then sorting and ordering. So these are things that definitely you can just reinforce with just your everyday interactions. Once we move to kindergarten, now we're starting to be more uh, direct and we're really looking at, okay, now I'm going to guide the conversation with my child. Now, one of the things about kindergarten is now we're starting to use some of these other platforms where we house information. So think of like Google Classroom. So this is where you would go to find if your child has any assignments. And the nice thing about Seesaw is that it integrates well with the Outlook. So as I said, if you are looking at your child's emails, you may see something that says Seesaw. If you click onto it, it will automatically, as long as Clever is open, go to this particular application and you'll be able to see exactly what your child has. Now we're starting to explore the world around us. We're also starting to look at identifying problems, making predictions, as well as our listening and speaking skills. Now, one of the things that I want to say is there is another application, another app that is in Clever that I'm going to talk about that will give you some videos and will give you other resources to help even with this young learner to develop some of this knowledge. Okay? Moving into first grade, now what you're going to see is that's where Savas, which again, remember, is the math program, and Discovery Education, which is kind of what I was alluding to, come into play. So first of all, you still have the Learning A to Z. Learning A to Z is where you have your English language arts. That's where you also have some of your science. Your Seesaw, again, is like where you're going to house all of this. It is your young learners version of Google Classroom. Think of Discovery Education in a way as the online encyclopedia. And you have access to all of this through Clever that you could put in something like place values, addition, and it will literally bring up videos specific to your child's age that will help to reinforce that particular standard, that particular idea, that particular concept. Now, notice that when you start getting into first group, the letters and sounds, the writing now to make the letters themselves. So not only are you dealing with how it sounds, but you're dealing with how it looks. And now you're starting to see the seesawness of, or the sing-songness of words and how words rhyme and things of that nature. You're also starting to look at math as a way of now taking numbers and linking them to quantity. And that's one reason why you're starting to get place values, you're starting to count, and then again, you're starting to deal with money. One of the things that I suggest, and this is something that you can get two bites from the same apple, or two, more bang for your buck, however you want to frame this. But if you use pennies, you know that there are 100 pennies in a dollar. One. So you could actually have your child identifying money and counting up to that 100 mark by just having them use pennies. With science, now you're starting to have them investigate the world around them. And as I said, science is my background. That's like living in my backyard. And science, especially with weather, it's something that we are blessed living in this part of the country, that we see all the seasons. So we could definitely talk to our young learners about, oh, well, what do you think is going on? The same thing with living organisms. There's a lot of wildlife here that as the year changes and progress, you'll see different organisms, different animals, especially birds, come into play, or just look at geography, just the way the land is laid out. And again, living here in Kansas City, you see hills, you see valleys, we have waterways. There's a lot just around us that you can talk to your child about to help solidify the learning that they have outside of the classroom, even more productive, because they can see just in their neighborhood, just in their everyday life, how the two relate. Okay. Now, moving into second grade. Now, again, we're being more more direct, and we're putting more emphasis on the writing process, because as you notice, now we're being intentional about, okay, we're forming words or writing things down to be a sentence. In addition to that, we increased our number counting, and we're now grouping numbers. I look at this and I think about, the counting to 100 by fives, and I'm kind of dating myself here, but I remember with Schoolhouse Rock, there was always that one with the guy doing hide and seek, and start 5, 10, 15, 20, solidify this knowledge. And you'll find that, decades later, your child will still remember some of these things. In addition to that, now you can start talking about, we have pennies, those are one. Now we have these things called nickels. And again, we're trying to count by fives to 100. We know that, well, if I have 20 nickels, I have a dollar, which is 100, which is 100 pennies. So you can start now helping your kid or helping your student make this connection between the value of money, but also between numbers. Again, with science, we're still sticking with weather. Now we start talking about, okay, more so than just seasons, but the different types of weather patterns that you'll find in particular seasons. And with social studies, be citizen, even for a young child, it brings in this, okay, well, what does it mean to be like, I live in Kansas City. You pay taxes, you go vote. What does that mean? So we start that conversation here in second grade. As I said, if you notice, we're still talking about Solace as being their math resource, Discovery Education as being not only science, but as I say, like this encyclopedics, and get some resources that will extend the knowledge of your student. Our Seesaw, and then our RAS Plus. Moving into third grade, again, we're developing these conversations even more. Once we get into fourth grade, that's when we really start talking about, especially with the reading and writing, that independent nature of not only your child being an independent reader, but your child being an independent writer. And so one of the things that you're noticing here is that they're reading words, they're doing the vowels, but they're also starting to write with use of books because now they're taking someone else's words, processing it, making it their own, and then taking that information and disseminating it or passing it out to other individuals. So this is a great way of either reading a book with your child or having your child read the book and then having the child tell you, well, what's going on here? With your math, you notice again, we're talking about now going from coins to dollars, or as my grandparents used to say, paper money, but as we know, dollars aren't made out of paper. That's something different. And then the idea of graphs, charts, things of that nature. And that brings up the idea that numbers aren't just the symbols themselves. Numbers represent ideas. And when we're looking at the graphs and the charts, we show that numbers can actually tell a story about what happened. I mean, this is a great time to start breaking a lot of that up because, as you know, when we start looking at election data and things of that nature, there's going to be a lot of graphs, a lot of charts. And so you can literally take math and then link it to what they're going to be learning in social studies. Because again, notice, social studies, we're talking about the three branches of government. And as you know, very soon we're going to be dealing with that executive branch. Now, again, as I said, your Discovery Ed is like your virtual encyclopedia. So that is a very, very good resource for giving you more information about the branches of government and helping to solidify what is really going on in the country right now. Because remember, this is also a year where we do the census. Now, as we move into fifth grade, is going to be something that is a little different. Prior to fifth grade, students do not have to take a math test per se in science. Once you get to fifth grade, now you're pretty much taking all of that science knowledge that you have built from kindergarten all the way up, and you're using it now in a way where you're able to look at data, look at charts, and then, as I said, make that next step of okay, what does this mean? So if you notice, looking at science, you need to look at an ecosystem, the interaction between animals to say, okay, well, what is going on? Why is it that, in the wintertime, you see, sometimes you see rabbits running around, but then it stops for a while and then they pop back up. I mean, it's so many different things that you can bring to the conversation. Again, with the reading and the math, you are going deeper in the discussion of not only the writing or the reading process, but with numbers now, you're going even further to, okay, I know that numbers deal with quantities, but now I can use numbers to measure things. And one thing that I tell folks is that when you start talking about perimeter, when you start talking about rectangles and square footage, your house is have my son. Right now, he's 16, he returned 17, but when he was in fifth grade, I actually helped him paint a wall. And the reason is because when you paint a wall, you have to know the amount of paint that you need for the number of coats. And they'll tell you, but measuring it out and seeing if that's, real, like, okay, they said I could put 3 coats of this. Are we going to get 3 coats out of this, Dad? Let's see. So again, I want you to understand that supporting your students in a lot of this is really looking at what goes on in my day-to-day life that I can link to this. And if for whatever reason it's hard for you to say, I don't really have a good example of this, I always say, go to Discovery Education. Go ahead and put that into the search and see what pops up. And I guarantee to sixth grade, now we start going into the siloing of information. And here's what I mean. Pretty much up until this point, most schools or most students will have one teacher that'll teach them all the content. But once you start getting into your upper elementary, which is kind of like sixth grade, an ELA teacher, English teacher, a math teacher, a science teacher, maybe even have a teacher that does like specials, like this thing that we have called iSpark, which is like STEM. So based on those areas. The other thing I want you to notice is once you get to this grade level, now you have these two different platforms. Like remember I told you we have Google Classroom and we also have Teams. They do the same thing. It's just that one lives in the sphere of Google and the other lives in the sphere of Microsoft. They're pretty much the same product. They're also the ways that your student will interact with their teacher. Seamlessly. And when we're talking about synchronous, we're really talking about your teacher, your student's teacher, and your student via the web. Okay? So looking at sixth grade, now we're starting to look at celestial bodies. The main one being solar eclipse, lunar eclipse. And this is like where discovery education really becomes more robust. Because initially, when it was purchased for the district, it was for science. But we have expanded it to cover pretty much all of our content area. And that's why I keep on referring to it as this digital encyclopedia that you can use to look up other things besides science. But science is its heart. It's the foundation. Now, in addition to your solar eclipse, you start looking at or talking about the Earth's orbit. Now, here's what I want to say. These are topics that during this first 9 weeks, you should hear or see your child working with or working in the sphere. So like, for example, your seventh grade child, instead of talking about the Earth, they're looking at animals and plants. They're looking at the life science side of it. Your eighth grade student is also looking at the Earth, but now instead of the celestial side of this, like the universe, they're looking at the planet itself. So we're talking about, what fit together like a puzzle piece. Let's play tectonics. Or why is it that, you have some rocks that are very shiny, the other rocks that are very dull? That's part of the rock cycle. Once your child moves through middle school and they start in high school, now you're looking at things like physics, chemistry, biology. We start our students with something called physics first. Think of it as physical science. And one of the things that we start with in the beginning of the year is the idea of electricity and currents. And here's why. Most everything that we have deal with or run off of power. And electricity is the prime source of that for much of what we do. That is also something that if you look at jobs, especially anything dealing with trade, it's very good to understand circuitry and how electricity moves, and also what kind of energy or force is involved in this process. Now, as we move into chemistry and biology, we're going to start chemistry with atoms and shell. Biology, again, we're looking at water, but then we start looking at, okay, what makes up life? And so, again, you have carbohydrates, you have proteins, you have nucleic acids. There's a lot there, but you don't have to feel that you have to take it up upon yourself to come up with ideas. Please use discovery education to help with all of these topics. Now, when we move into math, middle school and our high school students, from our elementary students, when it comes to math in ELA, which is English Language Arts, they use McGraw-Hill. Unlike Savas, McGraw-Hill lives inside Clever. And so again, if you start the day with Clever open, then it's very easy for them to not only access the McGraw-Hill side, but if there's any homework or any classwork that's given through Google Classroom or through their Outlook, it'll automatically open it up because again, McGraw-Hill lives inside Clever. Now, as you can see with mathematics, with sixth grade, you're dealing with fractions, percents. In seventh grade, you're looking at solving equations and problems. Eighth grade, you start getting into exponents and things of that nature. But again, the main resource for math is McGraw-Hill. But if you need extra help, or if you need another way of explaining any of this, just type in those particular topics into Discovery Education, and videos will come up that'll help and assist with what's going on. Now, one thing I do want to point out with McGraw-Hill, it's very robust as far as a resource. And then when I say robust, what I really mean to say is there's a lot there that goes beyond what your child is going to be responsible for in the classroom, like work for their teacher. So McGraw-Hill, their resource also has videos. They also have tutorials to help explain this information. And so you actually have two very good places to find what you need to help your child be successful. As we move on, you see that the math gets harder. And I can definitely tell you, even though I am very much science minded, I have to sometimes go to McGraw-Hill or just Discovery Education to help my student or my son with his pre-calculus and our his calculus work. So trust, believe, it is not something that you're going to just remember off the top of your head, and it is not anything that you have to feel that you can't help your child because this level of math is something that either you didn't do or it was something that was done so long ago you're like, I can't remember algebra 2. Please go to these resources, go to the search bars, put this information in, and you will find what you need. Okay. Now, as we move into ELA, McGraw-Hill is also the same resource for ELA. And as you can see, now you're starting to get into that upper level English courses that are developing your child as a writer, but more so as a communicator of their ideas, of their thoughts, and it makes them have a voice. One of our coordinators, and his name is Chris Odom, always strives or stresses that student voice is so important. And he's one of the individuals that actually brought this particular product to our district. And we've seen that students and as I said, just like with the math, you can, if you need help, just go to the search bar of McGraw-Hill, and it will give you videos as well as other information to help you help your student with a lot of what we have here with our English in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. Lastly, I want to talk to you about social studies because once you get to middle school, that's who's on the house. And so we begin with talking about geography again, the earth that we live on, and where things are located. Then we start moving into human history, starting with U.S. history. And then from there, we then move into world history. We get a more robust look, or again, a more deep dive into U.S. history once we get to high school, and then again, a deeper, even still dive into U.S. government. And just like I said before, Social studies lives in discovery education. That is another one of discovery ed's backbones or its core. So that's where you'll primarily find that information. Um, but news is used. And the nice thing about that particular icon is your child can always go there to find up-to-date and relevant articles about what's going on in our country right now. And so between those two, I would definitely say that it would help your child to become a better citizen, but also be a more knowledgeable young adult and knowledgeable about who they are, the country we live in, and where we can take this country. Okay? Now, the last thing that I wanted to bring up are I'm not out by myself in curriculum instruction. I'm just one member of a wonderful team. And I just want to point out that at each of these levels, you will find help. Now, one thing that I do notice here is that Mr. Owen, who I did mention, his email address is here. His email address is very easy. It is the C for Chris, then ODAM at kcpublicschools.org. But if you notice, everyone else that represents the various areas of social studies, ELA, or math, science, like myself, and even our pre-K are all here and ready to help you whenever you find that either one, you need more information, two, you just need help with figuring out, well, where are we going, or where is my child going in this particular topic or discussion, or if for whatever reason you need some help with the teacher, please reach out to us. We're here to help. With that being said, are there any questions? Or let me just turn it back to Ms. Adams. If you could take over this part of the discussion. I'm still here. I'm still on. But I thank you for giving us your time, and I thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Does anybody have any questions about anything Dr. Jones has presented today, or anything related to technology in general, or curriculum in general? We do have a member of our digital learning team on the line too to help assist, with answering technology questions. Technology platform related questions. And Dr. Jones is here to answer your curriculum related questions. And if you need some tips on resources and helping your child understand or reinforce particular classroom concepts. Also, feel free, if you don't want to come off mute, to pop your question in the chat. Hi, Ms. Boyd.
I have a question.
Hi, I only want, can you email the curriculum context to me, please?
Sure, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Ms. Boyd. All of this slide presentation, we're going to convert to a PDF this evening and upload tomorrow to our website at kcpublicschools.org/parent-u, and that's where you'll find, again, this presentation. You will have, I will email it to you as well, and we will have a meeting recording, and also we are launching a compilation of video tutorials related to technology and digital learning. So that'll be on that page as well.
Okay, and also on the resources, to help the parents to learn, can y'all actually put that on the individual students page? Like when you got a teacher, can you put like resource page where they can go in and click on if they need extra help in math or need some guidance in math or something like that?
Sure, that's a great idea. I'm not going to say we're going to have that up by tomorrow, but we will get that up to that Parent University site. So I hope that you all check in with the Parent University page at least once a month or so, and just see what new resources and information we have added there.
Yeah, I know on the Parent Resources University's page, but I'm also talking about, and I think Dr. Jones know what I'm trying to say, where when the kids go into the Classroom and got the teacher's name on it, can't y'all put up one of those to list
Oh, inside the
resources?
Google Classroom.
Yeah, I think Dr. Jones know what I'm trying to say if I'm not saying it correctly.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Dr. Jones. And,
Yes, yes,
or
yes,
someone
yeah.
from our digital learning team.
Yep, I understand.
So you understand what I'm talking about, Dr. Jones?
Yes, yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. And so, in addition, so you're saying like when you have a student that goes into the Google Classroom and it's that page with the teacher's information.
Yes, where the teacher, where you go click into teacher Y or teacher B, and you have that little thing that says resource. You can have a resource page there.
I got it. Yeah, there should be I'm almost positive that there's a way to add that in. I do know that with that one screen that I showed in the very beginning, that is like the announcement screen. If we put it in one time, it'll always be there. Your student may have to scroll, but it'll always be there. And so those discussions never go anywhere. So that's one way that we could definitely make that happen.
And thank you for that feedback and support.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question too.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is there like a certain link or tab I can click on to view like all the graded assignments and how they're doing currently, like their grade point average? And, you know, I want them to keep up and see what's being done and not have to click on every single assignment to see what her grade was. I see where it says assigned and turned in, but is there one place that basically groups all that information together?
Yes, you're talking about in Google Classroom, but basically Google Classroom does not talk to Tyler, which is where all of the grades are housed per se, or where your student would get all their information in order to get the information for like their grade card. So I know Melvin had put in the chat that we need a Tyler one-on-one section basically. And what Tyler does is they will email you every time the teacher puts in a grade, if the teacher gives access at that point like that. So you can see, like get a text or an email to let you know every time your student has turned in work. And that's what we call Tyler, which is our student information system. And we can look into having something on just that particular.
You said it's Tylen?
Tyler, Tyl.
Tyler. Okay, I haven't seen this app yet. It's an application?
Yeah, it's called Tyler. It's Joe Jared just put it in the chat. It's our student information system.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I must have missed that.
Yeah, I just put it in there. It's web-based. It's just what houses all of the students' grades. You'll need to request, I believe, from your building to get that parent portal access, but with your student at home, your student also has that same access using their district username and password, where you can see all of their grades, attendance, all that good stuff.
Oh, okay. I will check it out. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Excuse me, well, we all know almost this first quarter is almost ending. I think next week is the last week for this first quarter of the semester. Our first, 6 weeks or something, or 7 weeks?
Yeah, we're getting pretty close to midterm. So this is about the time that midterms start to go out via Tyler.
Are there any other questions?
También pueden hacer preguntas en español.
Well, it does not seem so. I think that we are good to go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank you all again for joining us tonight. Please stay tuned for future Parent University topics and dates. Also, please put your ideas in the chat, or you can email me any ideas that you have. We will get a form up on the Parent University page that has a form where you can submit your ideas. on Parent University topics. We want to make sure that we are being responsive to you and providing the information and resources and tools that we have. So I'm putting my information in the chat. Oh, and it looks like we have a parent who has a question in Spanish. Camila, can you ask again, please?
Sí, si quieren hacer preguntas en español, lo pueden hacer en español. Si tienen preguntas sobre la tecnología o
Hola.
si hola. ¿Tiene alguna pregunta?
Mi pregunta era cómo puede tomar mi hija el examen, ya que acaba de entrar a la escuela y no entiende mucho el inglés. Entonces me imagino que el tomar su examen no lo podrá tomar
So
por el
Courtney,
hecho de
she's
que no comprende mucho el inglés.
Sí, just Courtney and for everybody else, she's asking that her daughter, who does not know English too well, how she can take her test and her exams. So lo que puedo hacer es que tenemos un departamento de lenguaje que están aquí para soportar a usted y a su estudiante. Felicia, ¿sí está en línea todavía? Es parte de ese departamento. ¿Qué tipo de examen?
Oh, give me just 1 second. I'm going to end. Oh, Felicia says what type of exam, but Felicia, I'm going to go ahead and end interpretation
Que
so
no se
that you
alcanza a
can speak.
escuchar, se mutea.
Ok. Si usted está llamando por teléfono o está en línea usando la aplicación de Zoom para hacer esa pregunta.
Señora, ya puedes hacer la pregunta. Si estás hablando sobre el examen del inglés, eso lo tomamos en la escuela del Northeast Middle School, que está por la Independencia. Si estás hablando sobre el examen que le están dando en todas las escuelas sobre que le corresponde al estado o el distrito, nosotros estamos para apoyarlos y en hacer acomodaciones que necesitan los niños para poder tener éxito en los exámenes. Pero dependiendo de su situación, sobre de qué tanto el examen, porque no los necesita tomar los exámenes si tiene menos de 1 año aquí en Estados Unidos, pero si tiene 18 meses o más o nacieron aquí, nosotros le hacemos acomodaciones sobre de los exámenes. Y tenemos maestras en cada escuela que le corresponden niños que están aprendiendo segundo idioma. ¿Sí te contesté la pregunta?
Sí.
Ok. ¿Alguna otra pregunta?
En esta cuestión de ella, entonces necesitaría ella agarrar otra clase para poder comprender más el inglés.
No, la cosa es que si ella ya ha tenido el examen, que si ella está aprendiendo inglés y si usted habla otro idioma, nosotros siempre le hacemos exámenes. Nosotros ya después que hacemos eso examen, nosotros decidimos y nosotros mismos los ponemos los apoyos de las maestras. Entonces puede ser que la niña ni sabe que es una maestra de inglés, pero si hay maestras que trabajan junto en la primaria. ¿En qué grado está su niño?
4º grado.
Sí, cuando están en las primarias, nosotros le hacemos que le decimos co-teachers o trabajan junto con otros departamentos y las maestras se meten en el salón de la maestra principal y les ayudan. Entonces no necesita usted hacer nada. Nosotros mismos en la escuela nos los apoyamos y lo ponemos las acomodaciones y la ayuda de cómo aprender más el inglés con cosas reales, fotos, y nosotros le ayudamos en esa manera.
También,
Okay.
Felicia, si quieres poner la información del correo electrónico, también podemos poner esa información en el chat para que usted pueda conectar con nosotros. Por si tiene otras preguntas.
Sí, ahí te puse mi correo electrónico. Uy, le puse nada más a la señora. Lo voy a poner en el chat para que si usted quiere hablar conmigo después, me puedes llamar y yo te puedo ayudar. Y aquí también es mi número, se lo voy a apuntar. Si tienes alguna pregunta más al profundo, yo sí traduzco y doy los exámenes para el inglés. Ahí está.
Courtney, you can
Yes.
Proceed.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, thank you. I'm glad that you were on. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to go ahead and end the meeting. You have a good night.
Vamos a terminar la junta. Gracias y buenas noches.